Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter du Plessis. I'm a director at XA Global Trade Advisors. Nadia Vloen, who's in the background checking that I'm tracking all the questions and comments and people raising hands. So she's the one actually running the show. And thank you for joining. If you've joined, you have probably asked yourself the same questions that some of our clients have asked themselves. On the 6th of January, AMSA announced that they will be terminating their operations, their long steel operations in Newcastle, Vereeniging, and AMRAS. And that immediately raised questions. The first client interaction started just about after lunchtime already, when people came forward and said, well, what are we going to do? We are only securing our product from AMSA. They can supply us. They've been supplying us for years. We need this, and it's such an irony. I mean, there's so many industries that are absolutely dependent on quality product produced by AMSA, yet AMSA's business challenges suggest that there's just not enough demand, which I suppose must be directly related to our shrinking manufacturing sector. And demand that just seems to be dwindling, while there are companies that are absolutely reliant on ArcelorMittal to supply them on these products. And even though the question is asked about the remaining producers of long steel product, which fortunately we do have, the questions still seem to center around the fact that there are product categories and volumes that the other primary steel producers cannot quite yet step into. And there's a fair amount of nervousness actually around product availability. Now, you are probably on the session because you've got the same questions, because these products carry duty, and there are current anti-dumping investigation on long steel products with substantial provisional duties. What will happen if you have to clear your first imported shipments that you had to already place orders for, to be able to avoid disruption when AMSA finally fill all their committed orders and sell their stock and simply cannot supply you any, cannot accept any orders? What will you do if that ship is arriving in the port of Durban and you don't have any duty relief, not on the normal customs duty and not on any dumping duties? That's the question. It's a fair panic that sets in, because people also need to be able to price product, and they had it at a good price from AMSA. There was no import logistical cost and cost of material and duties on this stuff. So that question is quite a burning one, and that triggered this discussion. I'm glad you could join us. I am going to do a short few slides as background, and we've got a suggestion, but we need to, at that point in time, tap into your minds. You know the industry and your particular area of interest better than I would ever. And if I'm out of my mind with what I'm going to suggest, I need you to tell me that. But obviously needs and the level of urgency vary by industry player. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly share a presentation. You share this one. I hope you can see this. This was the opening slide. The first burning issue that came to the fore, apart from the absolute shock and horror of realizing this, the absolute impact of ArcelorMittal closing its long business, is what then happened following the 6th of January. In ArcelorMittal's application for additional dumping duty protection, and in what you see in the media and in their own public announcements, their long steel business faced some serious business challenges. Lack of demand, challenges around logistics, challenges around electricity. These guys have been fighting this for a long time, and this decision has been on the table and contemplated for quite some time, sincerely hoping that things can possibly change a bit. But it didn't. And a very, very tough decision that I think must have taken the guys at AMSA couple of hours to really work through, was made to terminate operations. Since the impact of this sunk in, trade unions, government departments, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Department of Labour, everybody realized that this has now come home, and this is a serious impact on employment, on the social fabric in some locations where AMSA really is the anchor tenant and provides not only direct jobs, but a lot of supporting a lot of indirect jobs and service providers in the locations that they are operating their long steel businesses in. And the idea started floating around that AMSA needs a bailout. And in the media, you would know that there's been much talk about this, and suggesting that if we can scrape together R1 billion, that will kind of tie AMSA over. AMSA is not an SOE. AMSA is not an SOE imminently missing and defaulting on a debt payment. That's what you fork out R1 billion for, like we became really good at doing in this country. R1 billion, it's not cash. That's the challenge here. It's the business itself. It's the state of the sector, the state of the manufacturing value chain, the state and the lack of demand. You don't fix that with R1 billion. You may tie AMSA over if you can sign a R100 billion infrastructure program, predominantly based on steel, and place firm orders on AMSA. Then R1 billion is a tie over. Not as a solution. It's not a silver bullet. And on Friday, AMSA again reiterated that they are still staying their course, and they are following the procedures that they need to follow in terms of the labor legislation and common sense, practical steps that they have got in their project plan to achieve this objective of terminating operations at these facilities. What this uncertainty of maybe not is doing is it's delaying a couple of urgent interventions that's required to avoid massive disruption. What would that be? Well, AMSA produce a very broad range of product. And from my discussions with clients, whilst our other primary steel producers are stepping into the shoes and have made substantial investment to fill gaps, volume-wise and variety-wise, they're not quite there yet. They may get there, that'll be great for industry, but they're not there yet. We need these products. And some of them go straight into the mining sector, go straight into the construction sector. What do? When AMSA halts its production, you'll have to access product. And the common thread would be that in the short to medium term, the remaining producers would probably not be able to meet volume on the more bread and butter products, the more mainstream products. And that may change once they have a chance to build capacity, but there's going to be a short to medium term, maybe a year, 18 months at least, where volumes may not be quite there. There's going to be a ramp-up required. And on the more niche products, it's going to take even longer. So steps need to be taken to make this product fairly accessible to industries that no longer can be supplied by AMSA, provided the domestic industry, the remaining operators cannot fill those gaps and get into those shoes. So how do we limit this disruption? When this announcement was made on the 6th of January, the clock ticked. It started ticking already. What one would need is solutions, and none of the solutions of removing duties or rebating duties are anything that can be decreed by the Minister of Trade in a Trumpy fashion to suddenly disappear. It doesn't work like that. There are vested interests and rights of local producers in the primary steel industry that need to be considered. That cannot change. The scope of the products, the product ranges and the varieties are too wide to be the focus of discussion, because that can also change as the guys ramp up the production to step into AMSA shoes. So that is a challenge. You can get stuck into that quagmire forever before you can move forward. So how do we limit disruption? And if you look at what disruption may mean, I mean, currently there are existing duties in place. I mean, on long steel products, which is quite a number of tariff headings in the tariff book, duties range from between, there's some that's free, but mostly range from between 5 to 15%, with 10% being the most common general customs duty. And we currently have an anti-dumping investigation carrying on H&I sections, where the provisional duties that's currently in place, if you ship in docks in Durban, on imports from China is 52.18% and on Thailand 9.12%. Those provisional duties are in place now. I mean, and they may still be in place in 4 weeks or 6 weeks if you cannot get your order filled by AMSA and you need to bring something in. Those will probably still be in place. Now, what do we do? Let's deal with the first, probably the easiest one first. The investigation process of the dumping investigation is still in process. However, AMSA is the sole applicant. And the premise of the investigation, the foundation of it in law, is based on AMSA's injury and the causality and the causal link between AMSA's injury and the imports. Had there been co-applicants in this process who also tendered information, showed industry, and proved causal link to low-priced imports, this would have been more difficult because you would not be able to terminate that investigation quickly. You'll have to maybe also, as part of a rebate process, look at relief. But currently, technically, this investigation can be terminated at some point without AMSA. AMSA is the applicant, and it's hinged on their information. So that may or may not happen. You would look at existing relief that's available. I mean, Schedule 3 manufacturing rebates or Schedule 4 temporary rebates, where you would probably aim to try and look for solutions. There's surprisingly limited duty relief on long steel products, probably because AMSA had a proper expansive range of these products. There was never a need to have Schedule 4 temporary rebates in place for products that AMSA cannot produce. There's limited scope for that. And the manufacturing rebates, we really have two that I could find. And trust me, I went through this thing top to bottom, Schedule 3. And I mean, there's a rebate for stranded wire that's used in the production of car tires, automotive tires, and tire casings. And there's also, and that can provide relief on the full duty, which can range between 5 and 15% on the specific items. And there's also a rebate in place on reinforcing wire used in the production of automotive filters and filter elements. But unless you're producing tires, automotive filters, there's no space there. And there's a very narrow range of product that benefit from the relief of the full customs duty. On Schedule 4, there are 4 temporary rebates in place, but they're very thin on the ground because it's split between alloy and non-alloy steel and H&I sections. So what you really have relief on is H sections of a height of more than 300 millimeter or more, and I sections with a height of 530 millimeter. It's only the H&I sections, which interestingly is also the subject of the current anti-dumping investigation. Those are the only Schedule 4 rebates, and these ones only provide relief on the full duty, meaning the full customs duty. It does not provide relief on any potential dumping duty that may be imposed. But as I said, I believe that that dumping matter can be dealt with if AMSA stay the course and finally wrap up their operations. So what are the options? Duty removals are simply unlikely. That has been the first thing put on the table when we had discussions with clients concerned about this. Can we not just remove the duty? No, we can't. We've got other primary steel producers that deserve the protection, that have made some significant investment, some really substantial investment. And the duty protection in our current environment in the steel industry globally is warranted. You can't just remove it. And these guys have an opportunity to step into some shoes. They can possibly fill some of the gap that AMSA is leaving behind. And duty removals will just not happen. It's a government policy that would be highly unlikely and more difficult to implement. And if I'm one of the primary producers remaining, I will fight this tooth and nail. So from an expeditious solution point of view, this is not going to work. It's not going to be expedient at all. It leaves you with Schedule 4 rebates to provide relief. And at the same time, while retaining the existing protection. So with a rebate that's imposed, it's I would call the infrastructure that you need for a relief mechanism, is you need these Schedule 4 rebate items to be included in Schedule 4. And they need to be done promptly and quickly. And it does not in any way yet detract from any orders that can be placed on the domestic suppliers prevailing at the moment, also can be subject to a permit process. So if there's product that can be supplied by the remaining primary producers, they should have the chance to fill those orders and to increase their capacity and build their businesses. That's what we always want to have in the first place. And they can step into a substantial gap because AMSA did produce a substantial volume of the product in the domestic SACU industry. So they can step into that fold, but their rights will still be protected. So rebate permits will deal with the product variety and availability and volumes. So variety and volume availability capacity can be dealt with if you place a request, place an order on any of the local producers and they cannot supply your grade or type of product, your type of profile, and they give you an exemption letter, you can get a permit and you can actually clear the product free of duty. But to get that done, you need the rebate items covering all the tariff lines in the tariff book into Schedule 4. And as I said, this is not Trump's world. This is a real democracy with proper laws. No decrees here. There's a legal framework to protect the rights of the existing producers or the remaining producers. And that need to be followed. And it's regulated. It has timelines to it. And that's where the problem comes in from an urgency perspective. Time is our problem. ITAC can self-initiate an investigation. They don't need to wait for a massive submission made by a huge consortium of users of long steel. That'll take months to even prepare. ITAC can self-initiate. And I've had really, really just casual discussions, informal discussions with ITAC. They were equally shocked by the announcement on the 6th of January. And they are prepared to self-initiate. They can do that. But I don't think they fully understand and grasp the urgency of this. Because a tariff investigation on rebate items can take 3 to 4 months, maybe longer, if it follows a normal route, even with a fair bit of urgency. In 3 to 4 months, for another 3 to 4 months and another month till you get a permit, you won't be able to clear product. Then we're way into halfway through the year before you can clear long product without paying the duties on it. And that is what's terrifying some people. So we need to expedite the process. ITAC is willing to start the process, but not yet. We're getting back to my first slide, the maybe, maybe not scenario. They do not want to go to all the trouble to do this if AMSA eventually, maybe with R1 billion in their pockets, suddenly decide that the operations are viable again. And they may stagger or delay their closures. And while all this happens, all the staggering and delaying or perceptions of delays, because AMSA is not delaying. AMSA is running a tight ship here. They are running tight to their project deadlines of achieving this goal in a very professional way. They are not dithering at the moment. But all these noises from the side suggest that people that should start the processes to save or to prevent significant disruption are not starting the process. So what can we do? And this is where we need to talk about this. I think there are two things that can be done. I think the process to get rebate items into the tariff book can be significantly shortened without prejudicing anybody. No permits, no imports free of duty until the local remaining primary steel producers say so. But that infrastructure is what's taking time. Getting a permit does not take that much time. That takes a week, two or three. But to get the structure in place in Schedule 4 to even get duty relief, that's where the challenge is. This can be shortened and expedited significantly. Given the urgency, obviously ITAC will self-initiate. We can approach ITAC and with proper motivation, not a letter backed by one or two companies. You won't get these guys to launch a whole investigation just on the whim of 2 or 3 entities concerned about product availability. That's not going to work. They're going to wait until with absolute certainty. And if AMSA, for some reason, would decide to close the operations in a staggered fashion, my apologies, you can imagine what's going to happen. Everything in a staggered fashion will mean that nothing will happen. And here's the challenge. We need an immediate self-initiation. Because the rebate items, like the aluminium rebate items that were created when the duty went up to 15% on aluminium, can cover all tariff subheadings. There's no special wording required. There's no technical specifications and attributes that need to be built into tariff wording for specific rebates. It's literally the wording of the tariff sections. Somebody at ITAC can put that together in an afternoon. If it's comprehensive and complete and double check, that can go to the next commission meeting. An investigation can be announced. First week in next week is actually the first commission meeting. If it's urgent, that's a commission meeting in Feb. Yeah, that may be a bit too quick, but there can be an urgent, a special commission meeting to recommend to the minister to kick the investigation off. That can be arranged and get on the minister's desk within weeks. And the investigation, one can shorten the response period because we already know what needs to happen. And the response period can be shortened in interest of time to maybe just 4 weeks or 2 weeks instead of 4. And if that's the case, you can get a recommendation back to the commission and to the minister to put these rebate items in place probably within the space of 4 to 6 weeks. That is if you really move on it. And that's what people need, because then they can approach the primary steel producers still remaining to say, guys, can you provide me with this or that? And they can say, not quite yet. Here's your exemption letter, valid for 6 months or whatever. Bring in the product, avoid disruption. That's the first step. Getting the thing kicked off is the most important step on an urgent basis. Secondly, once that 2 weeks comment window opens, we need to, whoever supported the request for initiation, urgent process, need to step up with proper information as to how their particular industry sector is affected, so that ITAC have enough material to make proper recommendations to the ministers. So 2 steps. Firstly, we need to get this stuff, an initiation by ITAC, self-initiation in this rebate investigation, kicked off immediately, like as soon as practically possible. And then we need the duties in place, and we need to comment and to get them in place. And that's where I need your help. And I'm open for discussion, open for questions. Nadia, if you can unmute anybody with questions, I would really appreciate that. But this is where it's at. This is what we're talking about. To move ITAC to self-initiate on an urgent basis and expedite a commission meeting and expedite recommendations to the minister and expedite the introduction of the new tariff items into the tariff schedule 4 in this case, needs to be committed to for the full process. Or we can sit here for 6, 8, 12 weeks before you guys have got any ability to even apply for a rebate permit. So This is my suggestion, but I need help with this. I need companies to step up, contact me directly, or to suggest how you will approach this, so that we can get proper motivations in order to move ITAC from a wait and see to an action mode. So that's the purpose of this discussion, and that's my story. Does anybody have comments? I mean, if we have anybody from AMSA here, I mean, what's the status at the moment? Participants are probably quite concerned and really wondering as to how things are going on AMSA side. Please enlighten us and give us an update as to progress. Or if anybody has got questions around the process proposed, or even have better idea, we're open for it. So please feel free. Nadia, do we have any questions or hands? I don't see any, but I don't know if my screen is really showing them. Angela van Skalkwyk, can you, Nadia, can you please unmute Angela?
Talking permitted.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, how are you?
Worried. I'm a bit concerned about you guys. I'm not in the steel industry, but I understand the frustration and the concern. So what's your...
No, I actually I have a question surrounding the provisional duties that's payable. So from our experience on the safeguard duties that was payable or on the hot rolled steel, the provisional duties that's now lapsed, we had rebate permits in place, and we still had to pay the provisional duty because there weren't a provision enabled in the rebate to exclude that from it. So we are now in the process to claim that back because it hasn't been published. What's your view on that? So in my mind, I'm thinking that if we do get a rebate, that would be great, but we would only be exempt from the general rate of duty and not the provisional duty. You would be able to claim it back at a later stage, but you will still have to pay that on clearance.
And the size of those duties would be of concern. I mean, 52%.
Correct.
It's ridiculous. It's extremely high. Now, here's the challenge. A provisional duty, and I think you know what I'm going to say, but I think for the sake of people that don't know, a provisional duty on a safeguard or provisional duty on an anti-dumping duty is not yet a duty in the technical sense. It's a provisional payment. It's a deposit. It's a PP. That's how the SARS system deals with it. So our legislation is written to rebate duties, not deposits. So it is an extremely technical issue. And if you're sitting with that kind of explanation that I've just given you, and you're looking at a 52% provisional duty, you must be thinking I'm losing my mind. But that is the unfortunate reality of it. We've never before really had provisional safeguard duties that had to be dealt with where the rebate items were already in place, but they on the product, but they obviously, even if they covered Schedule 2 duties or safeguard duties of anti-dumping duties, the expectation genuinely was that you can have it rebated at point of import. It's not a duty. And the cash flow implications of large steel shipments laying out that and parking it with SARS for a while is problematic. So that will be a concern. The best way of dealing with that is to revisit the anti-dumping investigation, as I mentioned before. Mike? No, let me unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Mike, I can hear you.
Yeah, hi, Peter. Morning.
Yes.
A couple of comments. Look, we're all operating in the dark here, and the two key players are not coming out at this point and calming the industry down or the market down. Yeah. Those two players are government on the one hand. We need to get some statement out of them in terms of their views around this. These are all very logical questions that you pose and that we have all been posing to ourselves. And then obviously AMSA need to finalize and get rid of this confusion. I understand that at tomorrow's results presentation, they are going to make some announcements, which is probably logical. And we'll wait to see what gets said there on any final decree on this matter. I do expect that there will be a closure.
Yeah.
So those are two comments. And if there are any representatives of government or DTI on this call, I think we would all love to hear from them in terms of what their thinking is around this, because we're all making moves to close the supply chain gap that we're seeing develop in the next 6 months. Okay. When it comes to pricing, you know, there are many players in the market with inventory bought at old pricing, right? And as soon as you drop and affect pricing positions taken with eyes wide open by these players, you're going to affect their position, and potentially that may be regarded as you know, unequitable. But be that as it may, we've got to be taking that into account too. Ultimately, players in the market will have to absorb the risks associated with all of this in one way or another. I think in long steel, there's this view that the steel is some of the cheapest stuff in the world, and we can debate that, and yet we still have safeguards, which is, you know, crazy. And all of this needs to settle. So we've got an excess supply over demand, and this has, I think, you know, any closure announcement is probably logical given that imbalance. But then duties have to be appropriate. So those are my comments, Peter. I think we wait in anticipation of both government and AMSA making some final announcements along these lines, and wait and see. Give it a couple of, you know, give it at least a week and see what happens. In the meantime, everyone is contacting each other and phoning each other and saying, what can we do? What can you source? Ultimately, every company in the supply chain is looking for reliable supply. Once bitten, twice shy, so to speak. You know, we're not going to, you know, we want to place orders with people that we can rely on.
Yeah.
And pricing has to settle. Okay. Now the rebates, the duties are impacting pricing. And clearly, if it's, you know, you're quite right, if there is no production and supply in South Africa, then, you know, those rebates need to be removed. There are other countries that you can source this product from, other than China and Thailand. And we've got to take all of those elements into consideration.
Yeah.
You know, prices are fluctuating and they are volatile. So those are my comments. I agree with you that we need to force ITAC's hand here, but they're not going to move, and hopefully they're on this webinar.
Mike, that's why I'm having this discussion, because at the moment, I don't think there's an appreciation, a genuine appreciation. I'm not saying that they are not concerned about this. I really just don't think they appreciate the level of disruption that can happen. I had discussions with a few clients that are very worried. I mean, they're obviously trying to see where they can still find somebody with some pocket of supply or whatever, but we're running out of runway. ArcelorMittal committed, as I expected them to do, to fill their orders. But once they've closed down, they may have some inventory, some stuff ready to go to fill orders. But there's a runway. There's a 2,800 meter runway that's running out, where there will be no more orders filled by AMSA. And that is either end of Feb or middle of Feb or early March, depending on how it's going. And at some point, you will not get product anymore. Now, the companies that I spoke to initially on that Monday, had a concern that they had to literally get orders in and get shipments on the way because they cannot afford disruptions. And that's a challenge. And that's why we need something to be expedited, Nadia.
Peter, would you just go to your next slide so people can see your contact details, please? And then also there's a written Q&A question.
Yeah. No, I mean, all right, I'll pick that question up just now. So here's my contact details. Thanks for reminding me. I was still intending to go down to that slide while we're still part of the previous busy with the previous discussion. The Q&A question, I'm just trying to get it up on my screen. Can you just read me the question, perhaps?
Sorry, it's from Taryn Hunken. The problem is that importing from other suppliers brings a duty imposed under anti-dumping, and there is no way to apply for exemption.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I need to go back 2 slides. Where are we? I think it was here. Where are we? I mean, I did speak about the anti-dumping situation a little bit before. I just can't find that slide now. Darren, we believe that the dumping case investigation, technically we had a look at it already, legally and technically, there can be a request for that case to be terminated. If ArcelorMittal ceased production and they are no longer supplying, and they were a sole applicant, the whole merit of the case, the very decision on which the case was initiated, is completely and utterly legally centered on AMSA's scenario. Had there been co-applicants, there could have perhaps been a fallback position, but we feel very strongly that that case can be terminated and the provisional duties can be terminated, provided we get clarity on this timeline. This kind of maybe not, this kind of staggered approach. I mean, what if the closure is now structured to happen over 9 months? What happened in the meantime? That are the things that are going to cause delays and significant disruption. We want to avoid that, and we want to at least get the dumping, the big dumping duty, the big disruptor, potentially off the table. That is a proper strategy, and obviously only if AMSA finally ceases production will that even be on the table, but that needs to be prioritized. Anything else? Mike, your hand is still up. You've got another idea?
Sorry, I don't have another idea. I'll lower it.
I mean, I need ideas here, man. I need ideas here. I mean, any suggestions? Practically, I mean, we sat and we brainstormed this, and
my suggestion is that you got to wait a week. But following that is that we've got to force ITAC to make some announcements. Yeah.
I mean, they need to start the process. Unfortunately, it can't be decreed. There is a process, and I mean, we've been in so many of these battles that it takes time. Yeah. We're going to run out of runway. I mean, there's no point in having rebates finally introduced in June, while you cease having product from AMSA or from any of the local guys by end of March, and you cannot clear product, and you have to lay massive amounts out in provisional payments or duties, which you can't even claim back because it's not even a rebate item yet. And as I said, backdating rebate permits, it's the first thing people come up with. Now just backdate the rebate permit. It's a problem. If you backdate it, it means you want an exemption letter now from one of the existing primary producers where you could perhaps have ordered from them. And how are we now going to get belated relief to claim back duties you paid 3 months ago? And SARS cannot control that shipment. That ship has literally, it arrived. It hasn't sailed, but it kind of sailed because the product is no longer under customs supervision when you try to apply and frame that entry under rebate. There are a lot of real problems in actually backdating permits.
I think you got to just ride the storm for a couple of weeks so the dust settles and we all understand the exact position. AMSA need to tell us which orders are going to fulfill and not. You know, there's disruption there. They need to decide. We need to understand how much steel that they are producing. They're likely to produce steel from Van der Bijl and move it to the rolling mills in Newcastle. Cutting slab into billet is an option to fulfill the orders. So all of these sort of announcements I'm expecting, or clarity on these ideas I'm expecting, and we'll wait and see. But in the meantime, while they're going through that process, yes, you're right. We've got to get clarity on where the duties will sit and how ITAC is going to deal with it, because there is a grey area. There's a gap here.
I mean, the honest truth is, Mike, they did say, the individual I spoke to did say, well, I mean, if all comes to worst and AMSA closes, etc., as if it's not extremely likely, they would self-initiate. So that's already a positive step. They realized to some level the necessity, but the urgency I don't think is there. And all these maybe nots, that's our biggest terrifying aspect of it, because something needs to start. Otherwise, we're going to have shipments at a horrible cost, or we're going to have delays in supply and disruption of downstream sectors and activities and operations for 2 or 3 months, maybe, until product can be cleared duty-free. Maybe put it in bond first. Whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's billet arriving from Zimbabwe every day. Yesterday, I was in Pretoria and I drove past 3 long triaxle trailers with 13-meter billets on the back, right? All coming from Zim.
It's
Someone's
huge.
buying that. Someone's rolling that into product. Okay, someone's taking advantage, and good for them. They're going to be closing the gaps. They're going to close the gap. That billet may even be going to Newcastle. Okay, I'm speculating, but this is what's happening, right? It's the big issue at Newcastle is liquid steel production rather than rolling mills. And these are the sort of discussions, and I presume you may all think that I'm closer to the action, but I think we've all had radio silence for a while. But these are options being considered, and I think the dust has to settle, right?
Yeah, they will keep an eye on it. I mean, obviously, if anybody in the process become aware of any developments, we're going to watch the official channels quite closely. And we are ready to move, but what will happen is we have the details of the people that participated in this discussion and that found it necessary to register for the session. We will have to be in touch again, because at some point, if the timelines are firming up, we will have to nudge ITAC along to just start the process. They don't want to waste any unnecessary effort, but that unnecessary effort is limited at this point in time. Just to get this case investigations to kick off in time and to start saving time, it's not that difficult. And it may not even be used. I mean, if AMSA decide to carry on, then those rebate items will never be accessed, but they will be available and they will be there. And if the industry doesn't turn and they must revisit the decision to continue, it will not be the same level of panic, because there will be already solution already in Schedule 4. So we're going to keep an eye on this, as we always do. And Mike, thanks for your input, and Angela, your questions, because you guys have been around the block a few times, so you know the industry, but you also understand from a client's perspective, some of them are a bit anxious. So I don't have anything else to say. We will monitor this closely. And we will look at the developments in the course of this week and see where it's going, and we'll be in touch. Anybody else with a question or needing some clarity on something? Dead silence. Terrified to silence. Jan van Krommige.
Yes, hi, good morning. Yes, hi.
There you go, Jan. Yes. I haven't spoken to you for a long time. How are you doing?
No, not too bad, thanks.
Yes.
I think we're all a bit nervous indeed because we're not too
Yeah.
sure where we're heading, but maybe a bit naive in my thinking. But we've all known about this pending closure since for about a year now. So I find it very hard to believe that all the main players haven't already got some existing suppliers, let's say, on board or basically looking into that. But surely as a temporary solution, wouldn't that be for AMSA to consider, or let's say to give all the guys a year or so just to keep running for a year, keep supplying for a year, give time for the rebates to come through. Basically, time is not on our side, as you say, and really it's just a rather rash decision on the 6th of January. Let's close shop end of the month. I think a lot of people saw it coming, but I just can't understand why. Obviously, financial reasons, I would think, but for AMSA to say, well, okay, let's give the market a year to find a solution and support the market until then.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit
Yeah,
naive in my thinking, but to me, that's a pragmatic approach, and that's mine.
Yeah, and I think AMSA has been at that stage where they've been telling people of their concerns for a long time. And I think you get to a point where it's, from a business perspective, it will be extremely costly and draining on the other operations if they run it for another year, because they have been cross-subsidized and kept on life support by the rest of the group for an extended time. The challenge is exactly the one we are seeing now. I mean, now the horse is bolted. The SENS announcement was made on the 6th of Jan, and still ITAC is keeping a wait-and-see game in getting the basic infrastructure for duty relief, like the rebate items, in place. I mean, a year ago, they would be even further out from actually doing something to provide relief. So now that we're at the crux, I think we just need to limit impact at this point in time by getting the process going as quickly as possible. But you're right. I mean, but I don't think it's viable to, in the interest of the better good, just for them to run their plant for another year. I think it's costly. I think that'll be overly generous from them. So we need to make a plan. And the domestic producers in the primary steel industry that are still there have got a unique opportunity to step in. I mean, now is the time to shine and to grow. But you cannot hold the whole downstream value chain ransom. And I cannot help to sometimes feel that the discussions that takes place about the steel industry is very much about the primary steel industry and not about the engineering companies and fabricators down the line. They are the guys biting the bullet ultimately. And they are the guys that we need to keep our industrialization going, even at the slowest pace. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. We're almost at our time limit. Nadia, this presentation will be available, or this discussion will be available. A link will be sent to everybody that participated. And you've got my contact details. Drop us a line, send an email. Let's have a chat. But I think you actually understand what the challenge is and where the timelines are at. That's the purpose of this discussion. Thank you.